Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of the Nimrod Pod. I am your embattled host, Lou Stump, alongside my brother-in-arms, Chet Liftkit, reporting to you live from the Nimrod Central Command Center. Before we get started, make sure you're following at the Nimrod Pod on X, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, and at Nimrod Pod on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. Like and share this episode to start the chain reaction and leave a comment letting us know what you think of the show. As always, this episode is brought to you by 50percentoff.com. 50percentoff.com offers premium wellness supplements, daily essentials, and functional formulas at prices that actually make sense for everyday people. You'll find a wide variety of trusted options for energy, focus, sleep, immunity, and peak daily performance. Right now, you can get 10% off your entire order with code TheNimrodPod. That's TheNimrodPod. Just click the link in our bio or visit 50percentoff.com/TheNimrodPod. Your support keeps Rex Jones and the Nimrods on air. Now, we have a very special episode lined up for you today. Joining us are two leaders from the kratom industry. First, Christopher Deaney, founder, owner, and operator of Christopher's Organic Botanicals. You can find him on X at KratomLife420, and you can support his business at Christopher'sOrganicBotanicals.com. Also joining us will be Jordan Richard, founder, owner, and CEO of New Hope Botanicals. You can support his business at newhopebotanicals.com. Jordan, what's your TikTok? Let's shout out your TikTok as well.
Yeah, it's at Kratom Ninja, but it's KR8TOM Ninja. Kratom Ninja.
Kratom Ninja. Make sure you give him a follow on TikTok. He's one of the leading voices on there, fighting for kratom, a fantastic advocate. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having us. I appreciate being here a lot.
Awesome. It's our pleasure. We've been wanting to do this for a while. We wanted to get a few leaders from the industry together just to have a roundtable because of the volatility of the regulatory environment. I think there are a lot of forces, we'll call them forces, that are trying to attack kratom, that are trying to put kratom at risk, and most importantly, put consumers at risk. Kratom does a lot of good, and in many ways, it's on the chopping block across the country. But I am very bullish about the regulatory momentum that we're seeing at the federal level, and I'm hoping that we can get enough research together to kind of give us a shield from any future administrations trying to take kratom away from us. Christopher, how are you doing, sir?
Good. How's everything going tonight?
Absolutely fantastic. It's a pleasure to have both of you on here. Chris, I know we've been mutual friends on X for a while, so it's great to finally have you on the show.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I was running a couple minutes late. I was going over some stuff. Sorry about that.
No worries at all. No. I want to kick this off by giving you both the floor to share your background with our audience. How did you get into the kratom industry? Chris, why don't you kick it off?
Sure. I discovered or found kratom in 2015. I was looking for something to help me basically with some discomforts and aches and pains getting older. I was also hit by a car at 8 years old. So I was struggling a little bit with finding something for pain because at 36, I had a heart attack. So I really couldn't take NSAIDs anymore. So I was looking for something more natural. Every now and then, if my pain got bad, I unfortunately drank alcohol, which is extremely unhealthy. So I was trying to find something that would help with my pains, that would be healthier. So I was starting to order some plants and herbs and found kratom, made a cup, and 20 minutes later, I was convinced this is something that I need in my life. So after trying to figure it out and understand it and learn about it, it was very hard. Wasn't much information. A lot of the places I ordered from, didn't get much information with it. It would come in a Ziploc bag, obviously no directions. I really didn't know much about it. So I joined a lot of forums and started ordering from Indonesia directly. So I started building relationships with farmers and discovered how they used it and met people that used it for decades and just was amazed at how healthy they looked and how healthy they are. And I was like, there's something to this plant, dude. And from that day on, I was sold. I decided to create a company and package it, give some directions, give some meaning behind the brand, and that's how we got started.
Awesome. Thank you. Jordan, how about you?
Yeah, so I had a really bad addiction to opioids, particularly back then it wasn't Vent, it was like black tar, from back in the day. And was going in and out of treatment, like nothing was really working for me. Growing up, I was one of the best junior pool players in the country, and I completely stopped playing pool. The only time I ever started playing pool again is when I needed to like hustle to make money to buy my drugs, basically. Um, and then there was two situations that led me to kratom. Is once I overdosed twice in 1 week, and the other one is that I got into a low speed chase with the cops. I never went above like 35 miles an hour. I used my blinkers, but I was gone. I was evading for like an hour, and finally got pulled over, held at gunpoint. They found heroin, meth, needles in my car. I remember sitting in the back of the car, and 2 days prior to this, I overdosed. And then I was sitting in the back of the cop car saying, like, God, if you get me out of this situation, I pray I'll turn my life around. Well, they let me go. And they arrested my passenger. I was the driver. I should have went to jail. But they were like, you were respectful. Your other guy was kind of being like not the most respectful, so they took him to jail. And then 2 days later I overdosed again. I was in the hospital, and I remember hearing my mom crying. And my mom actually went to school to become a drug and alcohol counselor because of me, because of how severe I got. And I remember her crying, like saying like my baby, my son, like all that type of stuff. And I saw her and my dad crying. I was like, I have to figure this out. So when I got out, I beat like natural ways to beat addiction. Kratom kept popping up and popping up. Nothing. I went to the smoke shop and tried it. It did nothing for me. And I was like, oh well, maybe the stuff just there isn't good. So I went on Craigslist and I looked for kratom, and I found a guy selling it in the mountains, which was like an hour and a half from where I lived. I drove up here and I met that guy. I took the kratom. Within 20 minutes, I was crying because I felt like myself again. I haven't felt that self like myself in years. And fast forward now, that guy's my business partner at New Hope Botanicals. I met him. He saved my life. Met up here. Met my wife. Started having babies and stuff. So that's how I got into the kratom space.
Super interesting. And I was actually just rewatching Dr. Chris McCurdy's interview on Andrew Huberman's podcast, Huberman Lab. And he talks about the three types of kratom consumers that he's seen in his research. We have those taking low doses essentially as an alternative to caffeine or coffee, as a stimulant to help them get them through their day and give them a mood boost. There's also those who take a larger dose who are trying to quote unquote get high or feel a sedative or more euphoric effect. And then there are those that are searching for an alternative to opiates. Obviously, Jordan, that's your story. You guys are both in the kratom industry, and you talk to a lot of kratom consumers. Which of these three categories do you think is the most prevalent, or do you think it's all across the board?
Sure, I'll go first real quick. So I actually apparently from the data from John Hopkins, the number one demographic of kratom users in the United States are actually college educated women who use it for chronic pain. I would say it's a really big chronic like pain community. But there are a lot of people like me that got a second chance for like a second chance of life over an opioid addiction or something like that. When I actually interviewed Dr. Jack Henningfield from John Hopkins, he was saying, if people want to get high, there are far more effective substances out there than natural leaf kratom products.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Most of our consumer base is probably women over the age of 40 that are looking for a pick me up or something alternative to alcohol, or something, not drink 2 pots of coffee a day. I remember I had a customer who was drinking 2-3 pots of coffee a day, and they're like, dude, after I started kratom, I'm down to my half a pot of coffee in the morning and I'm good now. I'm like, that's great. So there's so many things. The leaf is great. It really is great because it can be used for so many things. But yeah,
Veterans too.
Veterans, every demographic I've had over the last 10, 11 years, I've had every demographic I could possibly think of. From people who are living in $1 million homes to people who are homeless. So,
yeah, it's so interesting. I've talked about my story on this show a couple times, but I've kind of hit several of these categories. I started off looking for a pain relief alternative. I had several I had several major chronic injuries and surgeries, and I couldn't do the fentanyl and the morphine, whatever else they gave me, all these prescription pills. Not only did they make me feel weird, they didn't even help with the pain. I had someone close to me refer me to Kratom, and I took a very low dose, maybe 40 milligrams in a Kratom shot, and I woke up the next morning feeling like a new man. And since then, I've used it as an alcohol alternative on nights that I wanted to stay in, but still, feel a little bit euphoric, a little bit loose, have a good time, and almost use it as a social lubricant. But more and more, I find myself using it as a low dose stimulant instead of that second cup of coffee in the afternoon, or at night when I want to actually be productive. Instead of just staring at the TV, I just take some Kratom, 20 to 40 milligrams, and it kind of gives me a second gear I didn't know I had. So I've been all over the place. Chet, why don't you talk a little bit about how you got into Kratom?
Absolutely. So, I mean, there's tons of benefits for me. One of them is sort of curing muscle soreness. That can get to be a lot, especially when you have to get up and go to work and walk around and work out again every day. But also, when I was in college, around the time that Lou introduced me to it, I was going down a pretty dark path with alcohol, and it was becoming something that was controlling my life. So it wasn't to the point of no return just yet. But once I discovered Kratom and found balance in my life, I think that really saved me from sort of diving off the deep end and probably ending up in a way worse spot than I am right now. So I'll always thank Kratom for that one.
Yeah, in many ways, it's a weird comparison, but as a Christian, your testimony is so important because that gives people a gateway and almost makes it tangible that maybe there is a way for them to get into Christianity, to have a relationship with Christ. Same thing with Kratom. That's why I wanted to go around the room and kind of lay out everyone's testimonial, because Kratom is such a diverse plant and there's so many use cases, and it is kind of that one-stop shop medicinal compound. And I think it's very underappreciated, and actually not just underappreciated, it's demonized. And I think that's really unfair. I want to start off by talking a little bit about the industry as a whole. I hear a lot of these 7.0 advocates online talking about big Kratom, and I laugh every time I hear that because big pharma dwarfs the Kratom industry. And to think that big Kratom has any leverage over big pharma in political lobbying, in my opinion, is absurd. Obviously, there's money being thrown around, but it doesn't even compare to big pharma money. In your opinion, what are big Kratom manufacturers, like the ones that are in all the major gas station chains, doing right? And then what are they doing wrong?
That's a great question. So when I think of brands like that, I think of like OPMS, MIT 45, more of like the legacy brands. I think with a lot of the extract shots back in the day, what the industry got wrong was putting them right next to 5-hour and energy drinks. Like I feel like, yes, Kratom 100% can be in a gas station, but you should give people education so they get informed consent. Yes, 100% this can help you, but if you get so there's different types of extracts. There's like isolated mitragynine, which isn't really Kratom, just like if you just take caffeine out of coffee, that's no longer coffee. Then you have like full spectrum extracts, which take all the alkaloids from the plant. So it is the plant, it's just in a more condensed form. I wish more companies would have sold that version in the beginning instead of the isolated mitragynine products, because, Kratom is much more than just mitragynine, if that makes sense. Like Kratom is a combination of all the alkaloids working together. And I feel like people could have had a smoother, broad experience. But also, too, my biggest thing is, yes, you can sell it in a gas station, but you need to give people informed consent. Like when you put something, especially an extract, Kratom, according to John Hopkins, has a relatively low potential for abuse, but there's still a potential for an abuse. When you put that something next to 5-hour energy that has like zero potential for abuse, I feel like it can confuse the public. And I think that would be what I think they got wrong. What they did get right is that they were some of the first people to go GMP, meaning good manufacturing practices. They were very good with all their lab records. And back in the day, a lot of vendors didn't even test their products, So I felt like they set like a standard for manufacturing, which I can definitely appreciate.
Chris, how about you? And I'll also add a second question to this. Which of the top kratom manufacturers are the most responsible in your opinion?
I have to say, I agree with Jordan with the shot wars when we saw the shots and everything like that back in the day. I mean, they're good, but they were too strong, a lot of them. And they should have been a lot lower. And now they're a lot lower. And you're seeing that. And you're also seeing droppers on everything. A lot of different brands are having droppers now, which is important. If it's a tincture, if it's something that has 300 milligrams of mitragynine in it and, have a dropper on it. That's very responsible because even a familiar, regular kratom consumer takes 300 milligrams of mitragynine in one shot. You're not going to be probably too happy. So, just drop. I mean, I was always about droppers. We were talking about droppers since 2018 with a few of the different guys. And, I've been part of the American Kratom Association since I started, since 2015. And I've watched a lot of things change over the years with the industry and, just the way I think things are going in the right direction. There's a lot of people that are really showing that they're maturing and doing everything the right way. And a lot of people who weren't doing it the right way are now doing it the right way. So whatever lessons were learned, that's great. But, now, the GMP, people going through the processes of not just the AK GMP program, but any programs that are GMP, people that are just doing it right. You know what I mean? There's a lot more people doing it right. When I first discovered Kratom, like I said earlier, it was mostly sold in Ziploc bags. There was only a few vendors I remember that actually looked like a supplement and looked like a real product. One was Happy Hippo. That was actually one of the first companies I ordered from after I got a sample of it. And I told Chris that too. And I was like, listen, your company was one of the first ones and it actually had some information on it. You know what I mean? And that I was so impressed. But where are the rest of everybody that has all this information? So I think that's where we are now, a little bit better place.
Definitely. I remember it was so revolutionary when Viva Zen came out with the concentrate that actually showed you how much you were taking. It had the serving sizes on the side of the bottle so you could see how much you were pouring out. Now, I went to the gas station the other day and now I see that they have a tincture with a dropper on it. So it clearly, I think we're moving in the right direction. I have a follow-up question about Happy Hippo. Obviously, if we look at the vape industry, they've really gone after the companies that have marketed towards children. I think in a lot of ways, in many cases, they really weren't marketing towards children. No. But in some cases, with these extremely fruity flavors and names that sound like candy, it can get a little sketchy. Happy Hippo, they have a cartoon pink hippo as their logo. Do you think that's problematic?
Well, they took them off now as of last year.
Oh, they did? Okay.
Yeah, and funny enough, the way the brain works, I saw them at Champs without the hippo on the bag, and I still saw the hippo on the bag. So it was just the way the brain works. You're so used to seeing that. But yeah, I know. I mean, Chris even said the reason they even put the hippo on was to make it a fun brand, not make so much negative things about Kratom. So it was never really meant for that. But they realized, it could send out the wrong message, and they removed it. It was either earlier this year or last year.
Yeah, I'm glad they made that decision. Obviously, it's just cool marketing. They're trying to make it approachable to everyone. And I think Juul Labs, the Juul vapes, obviously they had a really great marketing campaign out the gates, and they're a medicinal company. Like their whole thing was to get people off of smoking cigarettes, get people off of doing actual tobacco, dip, whatever else. And because they were so effective with their marketing, because they were having marketing partnerships with people like Dave Chappelle and all these big figures, they asked them for, marketing towards children because they had celebrities behind it. And I think that's just the industry. I think that's just overregulation, in my opinion. But regulation is really important. Do you feel like the big kratom manufacturers are always catching up to you, or are they more trailblazers in the industry?
I don't know. I don't know. I've seen some things in my day that I think that we were trailblazers, companies like mine and Jordan's, and I believe some of the bigger companies were trailblazers. I think it depends on what it was. Um, I've put directions for use. I'll give you an example. I put directions for use and lab results for all of our products for years now. And that's something that I've done. I know Jordan's done similar things. So there's just the transparency. I think a lot of the transparency the smaller guys did. So
Yeah, and
that's
also too, I've always felt like people like myself and Chris, we always prioritized like the quality, and a lot
quality.
of the bigger
Yes.
brands they had to prioritize the quantity. Like when you're bringing in massive containers, multiple containers. Like I've been to Indonesia, I've been to Thailand, I see how it works.
Yep.
You have to get so many leaves just to fill the order. But when you have guys like us, like we're more like hand selected. I say it's the difference between like a Bud Light and a craft beer. Both are beers, but they're still very different at the same time. You know, that doesn't mean Bud Light's not good, but it's also not like microbrewery level. So
Yeah, I'll agree with
that's what I
that.
would say.
Yeah, they'll call it small batch or craft, either way. Yep, I agree with that because our orders aren't giant orders, massive containers or anything. So we get smaller, we know our quality. We want quality. We don't want just whatever cheapest price we can get. So
Absolutely.
When you get so big and you're in every smoke shop and you have that brand
it's hard.
notoriety, it's like, dude, they can put anything in there. And maybe I'm talking more about Crave because that's a brand I don't particularly like. I don't like their morals, their ethics. So I have no problem saying this. But because they actually started selling 7-hydroxy, OPMS, Mit 45. They didn't sell 7-OH, but Crave actually went to that. But like a brand like Crave, which has horrible quality powder, they don't care about the leaves. They don't care about the age of the tree. They don't care about the age of the leaf. It's just put the leaf in the bag type of thing, That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. I was introduced to Kratom with one of the major mainstream Kratom companies you can find at a gas station all across the country. And it was really Dr. Chris McCurdy's interview with Andrew Huberman that made me shift towards the Kratom leaf, and also because it's way more affordable in my opinion, and it's a lot less strong. Like you can really control your dosage if you know how to measure it properly. And then they discontinued that, and I looked all over the internet to find the most reputable, studied brand, and that's how I stumbled upon Christopher's Organic Botanicals. So I've been telling everyone I know for the past, I guess, a year, stop buying from this person, get everything from Chris, because I was so impressed with the amount of research and evidence you have on your website. It's unmatched. And I'm so glad to be joined by Jordan as well, because if Chris is recommending you as a reputable person in the industry, I mean, you must have your shit together, to be completely honest. Our story, so we're a very political podcast. We've spent pretty much the past year interviewing potential candidates and sitting politicians ahead of these midterms, and I've asked every single one of them about Kratom. This includes gubernatorial candidates in Tennessee. This includes congressional candidates in Tennessee who had no idea what Kratom was, but when I spoke to them, they pledged to our audience and then their audience to reverse the damage of the Kratom ban. So this is kind of where the intersection between, the guys wearing the mask talking about politics and Kratom comes into play. I want to talk about regulatory momentum, regulatory threats. In my opinion, I think this is the first presidential administration in history that supports the safe buying, selling, and consumption of Kratom. I have my problems with the administration. Don't get get it twisted. But I think, in my opinion, we have an ally. Do you guys think RFK Jr. is an ally of the Kratom community?
I definitely do. But he wasn't the very first one that was an ally. Our first ally was actually former Assistant Secretary of Health, Dr. Brett Giroir. He was at HHS back in the day. FDA wanted to ban kratom. This was under Scott Gottlieb. This was in 2016, the first Trump administration, actually. Scott Gottlieb was put on there, and he went on this tear to ban kratom. And basically, at first, Dr. Brett Giroir said, okay, you're the FDA. I'll make my recommendation to the DEA. So, but you have to do a review. And back then, there was 150 published studies on kratom. And by the end of that, Dr. Brett Giroir wrote a second letter to the DEA rescinding his intent schedule, saying that the biggest public health threat that kratom posed was if it were to be banned, because people will go back to deadly known substances. So the first Trump administration, Trump never really talked about it, but you had the head of the FDA saying it needs to be banned, but you had the second guy at HHS saying, no, like, we're saving this. So he originally saved kratom in the United States, not once, but twice. Nowadays, you have the FDA, which has radically shifted. You know, you had Marty McCary saying we're not concerned with the natural leaf, we're only concerned with these synthetic products. And you had the FDA study where they said kratom appears to be safe and all that stuff. And you have RFK, who definitely, I feel like, supports kratom, because that's kind of like, I feel like with the whole MAHA movement, it's more of like an alternative type of stuff. I think there's people within the administration who don't like kratom, like individual people, but overall, the administration is the most pro-kratom administration I've ever seen, for sure.
I would definitely have to agree with that. The whole MAHA agenda and RFK and what's going on right now, that is definitely looking into plant medicine and not supporting big pharma as much as, you know, we're used to for the last generation or so of people. They're trying to make a change. They're going to make a change, and they're making changes. You see what happened with ibogaine. You're allowing different things that used to be Schedule 1 are now going to be, you know, prescribed. So this is what we're moving into, and I've seen a lot of that. And
is it true that, I'm sorry to interrupt, Chris, but
go ahead.
Is it true, Chris, that didn't NIH just approve mitragynine for human trials for opioid use disorder?
100%. Yep.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought.
So
they're underway, right?
Yep, they sure are, and that's what I mean.
That's a massive shift.
It's 100% it is, and that's I'm trying to explain to everybody, like, if you really want to understand it, like, go to the MAHA Media Hub, go stop on one of the Zoom meetings at 4:00 on Wednesdays, go and, you know, look up the 2026 drug control strategy. Look what they're looking at. They're looking at a lot of these precursor things. They're looking at a lot of the stuff actually sold in smoke shops, mushroom products, 7-OH, a lot of these different products, MGMs, pseudoindoxyls. They're looking for all this. It's all part of a bigger agenda. It just, they happen to be part of it. So yeah, I really believe
4 years ago, I would never imagine that the head of the National Institute of Drug Abuse, Dr. Nora Volkoff, would be the keynote speaker at the 5th ever International Kratom Symposium, where she said, you know, natural kratom leaf has some risks, but it's not the problem. Like, the problem is the emergence of these synthetic products. If you told me that the director of the National Institute of Drug Abuse would say that even 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I would have called you a liar straight to your face. 100%.
Yeah, I was totally amazed by all that, honestly. Just to see where we've gone, where we're headed, where we've come from, you know, and what's going on now with the science is just amazing with the kratom leaf. So I think it's great.
Yeah, I'm hoping we conduct as much research as possible and just make kratom as bulletproof as possible so that nobody can reverse the progress that we've made. I mean, that's my hope. And I need to do some research on Brett Giroir, because I know I've listened to Chris Bell on Joe Rogan, you know, every time he's gone on. And after the attempted ban, he said that Trump's drug czar in the first administration said that banning kratom would do more harm than good because it would force people back to prescription drugs and opiates and whatever's on the black market. So it's really interesting you bring that up. I need to do more research there.
Yeah, you're talking about Jim Carroll.
Yes,
he was
Jim
the
Carroll.
former drug. Yeah. I actually got to interview him, and actually in Washington D.C. And that's exactly what he said. He kind of mirrored the stance of Dr. Brett Giroir, because the FDA came into his office, and the FDA is like, we need to ban kratom. It's terrible. It's nasty stuff. And so he goes, and Jim Carroll's like, well, it's the FDA. I'm going to believe them. But he goes, let me call Dr. Admiral Brett Giroir. So he calls them and he goes, hey, the FDA's here. And then Brett Giroir's about what? He's like, about Kratom. And Brett Giroir's like, I'll call you right back. So then he goes and then he calls him right back. He goes, do not believe the FDA. They do not have the science. He goes, I have the science. And he goes, do not trust the FDA. That's what the number 2 at HHS said about that FDA.
Unbelievable. So what does RFK's HHS need to accomplish before the end of Trump's term to prevent the next administration or future administrations from sending us backwards?
I think to pass final regulations like the Federal Kratom Consumer Protection Act or something similar to where we have something in writing saying, hey, this plant is safe. This is the way we regulate it. We regulate it like a supplement. I'm still hopeful. And, we always hear rumors here and there. I'm sure Jordan's heard them too, that somewhere, somehow it's going to come up that kratom leaf is an old dietary ingredient and it'll be grandfathered under DSHEA. So if that ever happens, that would be amazing. But in the meantime, if they had a Kratom Consumer Protection Act or something like that in place or something similar to regulate it, that's what we'd want.
Yeah, go ahead, Jordan.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I agree 100%. And speaking of the DSHEA Act, Orrin Hatch, who that's named after, is actually the first politician to use Kratom. He got into a plane crash and then used Kratom. And he was a big contributing factor of why Kratom didn't get banned. It was like a whole... it was like a 3-man team. It was Brett Giroir, then you had Orrin Hatch, and then you had the head of the DEA, Udom Dillon at the time, who was going to ban Kratom. But basically, Brett Giroir tracked him down through multiple airports in a different state and brought him to the side, said, do not sign that paperwork. You do not have the science. And he listened, basically. But yeah. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit off topic, but I just thought that was important to add as well. It goes way deeper than what people think it needs to be. But I also think, too, the clear distinction between the natural leaf and the synthetics and semi-synthetics is so important. I know they've said it, but they're not saying it enough. You can't say it on one news station, one time, give one press conference, and everything around us is burning on fire. In the past year, we've lost more states than the whole decade prior because of the confusion with 7-hydroxy and natural leaf products.
Yeah, and there was something filed today about the pseudoindoxyl MGM-15 and MGM-16. Now it's going to be announced on Wednesday that it's going to be scheduled. So, but in that document, I just found this out. It just happened at 4:15, 4:30. In that document, the DEA definitely distinguishes between the natural leaf and the semi-synthetic or synthetic products being made. So,
can you elaborate on this? You said a couple, MGM this, MGM that. Our audience might not understand what that means. Could you break that down for us?
Yeah, they're basically, I'm trying to think of the best way to say it. They're basically derivatives
fully synthetic.
Derivatives of 7-OH. That's the easiest way to explain it. So they're MGM-15 and 16. They none of them come from the leaf whatsoever. Pseudoindoxyl is not found in the raw leaf. 7-OH technically hasn't been found in the raw leaf. So, that people are getting nervous and confused about that because the pseudoindoxyl thing will be announced Wednesday. They're like, oh my God, what does this mean for natural leaf? It makes this in your body and does this. I'm like, stop. It does nothing to do with the natural leaf. Jordan will concur, I believe, with that.
100%. So think of it like this. You have mitragynine. The metabolite of mitragynine is 7-hydroxymitragynine. Then the metabolite of 7-hydroxy is something called pseudoindoxyl. But pseudoindoxyl isn't found anywhere in the leaf. It's just something that your body produces in very, very small amounts when you take kratom. So, But then you have MGM-15 and pseudoindoxyl, which are they have nothing to do with kratom whatsoever. They're fully synthetics. I mean, technically pseudoindoxyl is fully synthetic. 7-hydroxy would be a semi-synthetic.
And this is at the federal level, Chris?
Yes. And I want to say one more thing about the administration with HHS, RFK. We have a whole new administration like we haven't seen ever in our lifetimes. And like I said, they're making changes. They know what is natural and synthetic. They know the difference. It doesn't matter what organization says what to who. It really does not matter. We don't have a bunch of people. They're just going to listen to the crowd and listen to what they have to say. They have the science. They know what they're doing. And just with this right here, the pseudoindoxyl and MGM scheduling, that's going to That knocks out 7-OH right there for the most part, because most of those products in the commercial market have pseudoindoxyl and MGM in them. So there goes the 7-OH market, even without the friggin' 7-OH threshold. So.
And the false labeling that they put, like so many brands are labeled just 7-OH, but there's actually coming back with MGM15 and pseudoindoxyl. Also, what a lot of people don't know is every brand of 7-hydroxy on the market has unknown substances to science in them. When I went to the University of Florida to interview Dr. Chris McCurdy, I spent a few days with him and, got to tour his lab, and he has these mass spectrometers, and they would do these tests, and you would see the paperwork. He's like, you see this line right here? He goes, this is 7-hydroxy. But he goes, these other lines, we have no idea what these are. So basically what happens is, like, because you cannot get 7-hydroxy from nature. You can only chemically convert it to the mass market. There's not enough 7-hydroxy in the dried kratom powder. So they'll take they'll take mitragynine product and then use like pool shock to chemically convert it into 7-hydroxy. But in the starting material, it's not only going to be mitragynine. There will be trace amounts of other stuff in there. Well, when they're only wanting to oxidize 7-hydroxy, they are unknowingly oxidizing other stuff, and it's turning into other stuff that they don't know. Dr. McCurdy said, could they be benign? 100%. He's like, could they be wreaking havoc? Also 100%. He's like, we don't know because we don't even know what these substances are.
I call them chemical soup. It's basically what they are. No, they don't even the 7-OH community and people. I'm like, I know people in the community over there that are, pain patients or whatever, and told me their story, and they take a little bit and it works great. And I'm like, that's great. But do you have any clue what the hell you're taking? I'm trying to explain to you, please. There's so much crap in these things. Like, you think it's from the leaf. It's not from the leaf. Like, I've seen synthetic mitragynine from China being sold since 2018. They could take synthetic mitragynine from China and turn that into 7-OH with whatever chemicals, like Jordan's saying. It's scary crap, dude. It really is.
Yeah, and I see these people, these 7-0 advocates, and I think some of them are useful idiots. I think they've been duped into protecting 7-0. I keep hearing the liberty argument, like, this is our medical freedom. We have the right to consume whatever. And it's like, well, do you have the right to sell black tar heroin at Circle K? I don't think so. I don't think that makes any sense. Like, unless we are to make everything legal and accessible, every substance known to man, I don't think there is an argument for protecting the at least retail sale of 7-0. I think I know the answer. How do we deal with 7-0? Do we schedule it? Do we ban it? Do we regulate it?
I think based on the Controlled Substances Act that it meets the criteria for scheduling, whether people agree with the Controlled Substances Act or they don't agree with it, that's really not the question. Again, my heart, I'm not a prohibitionist by heart. I wish everyone could make the right to choose, but I'm also a realist. I live in reality and know that substances do get banned. If you don't like that, then move to another country. This is America. People think we live in like Peru or someplace where everything is decriminalized, or the Netherlands, Amsterdam. You have to do what's best for the majority of people within the laws that you're given. And so many people have lost access to natural leaf kratom products, hundreds of thousands, because of the confusion. It's like, what about their freedoms? You scream about my freedoms all the time, but you don't care about the grandma that lost access because of the lie that the industry said that you support. 7-hydroxy, it's impossible to sell it behind the counter in America. What they should have done, the appropriate course of action, and I'm not a fan of Big Pharma, trust me, I'm not whatsoever. But I'm saying based on the laws that we had, they had to do a new drug application and go through the 10 years and the billions of dollars to bring a new drug to market. 7-hydroxy is actually an illegal product right now. One, based on the Controlled Substances Act, but two is that they had no safety data. They literally used the public as human guinea pigs. You have to have data to bring a new drug to market, a new product to market. Where did we have that with kratom? Well, 1,000-year history of use in Southeast Asia. Soldiers here coming back from Vietnam. And I think, based on the Controlled Substances Act, 7-hydroxy will 100% be scheduled. And all the people that get mad at me for saying that, you should be mad at the industry that lied to you, because they should have done it the right way, but they didn't.
And I'll piggyback that with saying I go to Champ's Trade Show as a buyer every year just to walk around. We're a small, family-run business. We're only three of us who run the entire company. We have a co-packer, so that eases a lot of headaches. But I watched when 7-OH first came out. It was 2024. There was 3 companies on the floor, and they all had 15 milligram tablets. By the next year, there were 50 companies on the floor, and they were selling 100 milligram tablets. Within that 1 year, why did you have to go from a 15 milligram tablet to a 100 milligram tablet? Whether or not they had anything filed before it. If the company's selling 15, why did you go to 100? Because you're trying to get people addicted. There's no other reason for it. Because I know so many people who are chronic pain patients that use the 5 milligrams or whatever or below, and they're like, it works great. That's great, but that's not who this industry is targeting. Yeah, there might be 1 or 2 vendors out there who really care and they're trying to help, or I don't know. But the main industry, perks, bars, look what they're doing. That they're targeting you as a drug.
Call it dopamine. They call it dopamine. Make it look like Xanax bars.
Just, I saw this develop firsthand. It was horrible. And I knew right away you can't get 7-OH from the leaf like that in that quantity to make tablets of even 15 milligrams each. And I was saying, wow, that would be very expensive to do. You know what I mean? I'm like, this can't be, then the following year I saw, and I learned more and I understood what was going on. So it was.
When I went to Champs, I saw a company called Pop Roxy, like Pop Rocks. You want to talk about marketing to kids, and they're all like different colors. If a Kratom vendor did that, the Kratom community would shun them for that,
Oh, hell yeah.
But the 7-OH industry, 2 completely separate people, completely different mindsets. The vendors that I've always respected stayed with Kratom. The vendors that I was always iffy about all went to 7-OH. It shows their character, in my opinion.
I just could never I would just never sell it for a few reasons, even the beginning, because I could have sold it starting at our first call about 7-OH was in 2022, fall of 2022. So we are well aware of it, was on our radar. So I saw it coming, and then by the next summer, I was getting emails and, hey, bulk variety, this. I'm like, no, I'm good, thanks. And that was that. Then I started getting the phone calls in 2024 and 25 from people saying, I went to the smoke shop and I asked for Kratom. They said, nah, Kratom powder's dead. This is the new and improved Kratom. Gave them 7-OH. And they called me back. Oh my God, I'm having such a problem. I never had the problem with Kratom. And now I can't stop taking this. What is this? What am I taking? And I'm like, I really don't know much about it. Then I started learning more about all the different chemicals, unknown chemicals. I think there was 8 on one of the products, 8 unknowns in it. That's like, these people aren't just like, they're taking these high amounts of 7-OH. You're basically withdrawing off the consumption of hundreds of pounds of Kratom powder, which is completely unnatural. And then all the other chemicals that are in these products, you don't even know what they are. You're withdrawing from them too. So this is just a scary situation all around. And the government sees this. Like, they're not stupid. They see these problems. These people are on the Reddit forums. These people have been calling up, leaving comments, for a long time about a lot of problems. They're listening. They're seeing what's going on. So
this is super interesting. I'm seeing Kratom companies come out with tablets identical to 7-O tablets. They claim it's because they want to target former 7-O users who now don't have as easy access to 7-O. It looks the exact same. I personally think this is going to cause some confusion. Yes, you are going to attract people that were on 7-O, but you are also now going to associate Kratom with the tiny, ultra potent, ultra concentrated little tablet that you put on your tongue. Jordan, I'm going to pass this to you first because it seems like you have a problem with ultra concentrated Kratom extract products. Should we be limiting the concentration of Kratom extracts?
100%. And a lot of the Kratom extracts in the smoke shop now that are labeled extracts, they're not. They're like literally skating around the rules. They're just putting a Kratom extract label, but they're selling synthetics or semi-synthetics. My personal opinion is that God made Kratom perfect. The further we get away from nature, the more problems tend to happen. It's not Kratom's fault. It's people's fault for creating these problems, and instead of blaming the people who do it, the plant gets blamed. And that's where my issues lies. If a company is making these little tablets and calling themselves a kratom company, I would never in my personal opinion, I would never consider them a kratom company. I wouldn't look at them, I'm in the same industry as them. To me, you're a separate like industry. You know what, I've been to Southeast Asia, Thailand, and Indonesia. The amount of respect for the plant, you respect the plant. In America, we want things bigger, faster, stronger. In Southeast Asia, you know, it's quieter, return to nature. You know, that's how I think it should be. And the plant gets blamed for bad decisions done by people. So I'm not a fan of that whatsoever.
Yeah, I'd have to agree 100%. There needs to be limits. Product shouldn't have 400 or 500 milligram shots. You know, there's no way. Like if a shot bottle is a shot, it should be one serving. That's it. You know what I mean? 2 servings, maybe. And it can't be 400 milligrams. You got to make it 40 milligram serving or a 50 milligram serving max, something like that. You know what I mean? Because, and a gram of good kratom powder is anywhere between 12 and 15 milligrams a minute. So, you know what I mean? If it has 1.5 milligrams of mitragynine per gram, it'll have 15 milligrams of mitragynine. So if you have that and you have 4 grams of kratom, you know, that's 60 milligrams of mitragynine. That's my normal amount. About 4 grams is what I take. And maybe 5 grams, 4 to 5. So that's about, for me, that's what I consume in one shot. So I'm taking that from a consumer who's very experienced. Now, people who are just starting out with kratom, you might want something that's only 30, 40 milligrams, and you want full spectrum. You never want isolates, any of that isolated products, full spectrum all the way.
Yep. Like Todd that we're going to have on here from It Wellness, his company does it correctly. You know, there's a lot of companies out there that do not do it correctly. They're selling like isolates, but to be considered a real kratom product, in my opinion, has to be the powder or a broad spectrum or full spectrum extract, meaning all the plant's alkaloids at one time. Like if you went to Starbucks and you asked for a cup of coffee, but they handed you a caffeine pill with 500 milligrams, you'd be like, this is not coffee. You know, the same thing applies to kratom. And a lot of these gas station products are literally that caffeine pill, or in 7OH's case, they'll take that caffeine pill, put pool cleaner on it, then sell it to you as a natural, you know, leaf material or product, whatever you want to say. But yeah, it's just, and kratom is always the one that gets the fall, unfortunately.
Can you use kratom to get off of 7O?
I hope people do it every day. Every day.
Yeah.
I hope people do it.
Wow. This talk about regulatory momentum and threats. How do we maximize access to kratom while minimizing the safety risks? Is the KCPA, as proposed by the American Kratom Association, the gold standard? Would you change it in any way?
You go first, Chris. I'll go next.
Yeah. There's always room for improvements on everything. Having a fee schedule that'll be a little bit more affordable for smaller vendors would be easy. Some of the states are making their own versions, which is, I understand it. You know, you don't want kratom to get banned, so you're like, you make the agreement, you do what you got to do, and I fully understand it. But a lot of times for smaller vendors, you know, they can't afford the registration fees for like per product registration fees or stuff like that. So some of those states, you know, maybe that could be amended at some point, you know, down the line, where they could say, hey, let's just make it a company registration fee. You know what I mean? And just have per company, or even better, have a federal KCPA with a federal registration fee. And you just have your company registered federally to sell natural kratom. And that would be beautiful if we could get that done.
I agree with a lot of what Chris said. I think regulation is always a good thing, but over-regulation is a bad thing. And some of the vendor fees I've personally seen are extremely high in certain states. Like it's not realistic. It's like you're kind of pushing out the bad actors. I mean, you know, you're pushing out the good actors in a lot of way when you make things like unattainable, unless you're like this huge, massive company. But as far as the KCPA, I think the framework of it is a wonderful document basically. And what I want to talk about the KCPA too is like a lot of the pro 7-OH people always say, oh, this is like a money war. This is just a money war between Kratom and the 7-OH industry. The first KCPA was put into effect in, like, I believe 2018, where you could not exceed a 2% level of 7-hydroxy. This was years before 7-hydroxy ever came onto the market. So I really think I mean, obviously money is an important thing, but it's like the 7-OH industry did not listen to the science, and we did, and they get mad at us for us calling them out on that, if that makes sense. If the federal KCPA passed across the country, all of this nonsense would go away. Hopefully.
100%. I agree.
What should Kratom consumers look for when shopping for Kratom?
Really, you should be looking for lab testing, some kind of directions for use. Always look on the packaging if you're buying it, make sure the company, you could reach the company, that's important. Customer service, reach the company, stuff like that. You can ask some questions if you have any. It's kind of hard. I remember back in the day, you'd purchase products at a smoke shop. You couldn't find out who, what, where, because like when I used to go to Champs, you would see a new company there. And this is not, this is regular, 2018, 19, 20. You'd see a big company come up there, push it into all the smoke shops, and the next year they disappear. So,
100% right. I think a lot of what he said, making sure that they lab test their products is a massive thing. Also, too, the quality, just avoiding smoke shops. I feel like smoke shops are the worst of both worlds. You either get extremely low quality powder or like these synthetics or semi-synthetics. Like, always go with a reputable, like, online vendor. That will always be my recommendation to people, 100%.
It goes back to the small batch or a craft, type. And that's really what it is. Like, it's real hard to get, you're ordering a container's 27 tons. You're getting that much. You're getting 20 containers, and it's going to every shop in the country. You think about how much that is. They're harvesting trees 6 times a year instead of once a year or twice a year. They're just getting baby leaves, and you'll see it. It's not the same.
Yeah, there's a big difference between like wild harvested kratom and plantation kratom. So when I went to Indonesia, I mainly dealt with wild harvested kratom. It took me, when I got into Indonesia, I had to take 2 more plane rides, a 6-hour boat ride, and a 6-hour car ride through the jungle to get to the wild harvested trees. Like, these are where the trees grow naturally. Some of these trees have been alive since the invasion of freaking Normandy happened. That is much different than a plantation strictly grown for profit, all for very young leaves, with very young leaves and very young trees that they're harvesting every 2 months. So like what Chris was saying, if you strip all the leaves off a kratom tree, it takes 2 months for it to grow back, but the leaves don't reach its peak alkaloid maturity until 4 to 6 months. If you own a kratom plantation strictly for profit, you can literally make like 6 times the amount of money off the same tree. Of course, you're going to harvest those every 2 months, when in reality, like, giving nature time to do its thing will make the biggest difference in the world, for sure.
Yep. And in making sure where you're getting your leaves from and harvesting from is the right area and not a dirty area. Some of them are, you're trying to get all the leaves in. It might be a little bit, questionable leaves there. I remember back in the day with the E. coli, they traced DNA back to one of the kratom trees because that area of the river was so polluted where they were harvesting from. And that was like, oh my God, it's disgusting. So that was a good lesson.
Yeah, washing the leaves in the river too. I remember when I first became a vendor, this was like 14 years ago, a guy from Indonesia sent me a picture like, you want to buy my kratom? And you see the leaves and there's a chicken on the leaf, like all the leaves drying, and there's literally a chicken on top of it. Things have now they have like regulations in Indonesia, which has made things a lot better, like way, way better, 1,000 times better. But back in the day, it literally was the Wild West,
100%. You'd have to throw away a lot of your kratom sometimes, just, because like in the beginning, we went through a couple different guys to try to figure out who was the best and this and that. And it was good for a little while. Then we'd have a problem. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm throwing this out. I'm paying money for testing. So yeah, it was a little scary back then.
Back in the day, when you hear like these rumors of like high heavy metals in kratom, a lot of that comes back from way back in the day, like Indonesia. The
Yeah.
industry wasn't developed yet. Now, when you get good lab tested kratom, like I did a fun comparison between my lab tested kratom versus the heavy metals in like common everyday foods. So a Hershey bar had twice the amount of lead than our kratom did. A can of mercury had 30 times the amount. A can of tuna had 30
Tuna.
times the amount of
Mhm.
mercury. Then our kratom. Then rice had 4 times the amount of arsenic, and leafy greens had 4 times the amount of cadmium in it. So, like a lot of the anti-kratom people, they'll say, oh, it's full of heavy metals because they just don't keep up with the modern science, I guess.
It's super interesting. Do either of you sell kratom business to business, or is it all direct to consumer?
Direct to
Some
consumer.
business to business. Some business to business. A lot of smoke shops have reached out to me, but I said no because I got weird vibes from them. Like
Yep.
kratom is my life. As you can tell, I'm kind of a nerd about this stuff. I could name
Yep.
anything you want on the subject, and I don't want to get it into the wrong hands. I've trained my staff. When someone comes in, a lot of times they'll come in looking for kratom and they'll leave with nothing. Why? Because I've trained them to ask a certain set of questions. Like, is this going to benefit them? Like, kratom is not for everyone, but for the people who need it, it's everything. And
Yep.
I feel like a lot of smoke shops, they're just, oh, the person's in here for a vape, but it's like, oh, here, try kratom. It's like, why are you going to offer them this? They didn't need it. Type of thing. Like, and because that's it's just not my area where I feel comfortable.
It's almost like, I don't want to, it's like you have kind of like being a gatekeeper. You want to make sure the right people are consuming it. That's all.
Absolutely. That makes total sense. That being said, as someone who wants to protect kratom at all costs, how should kratom products be sold at retail? I know we don't want them to be merchandised alongside 5-Hour Energy, but are counter displays okay as long as the product is only accessible to the clerk behind the counter, or should all kratom be in the back bar just like nicotine and tobacco?
I think it should be behind the counter for the most part. Like, just not next to candy. You know what I mean? Not be smart about it, but I actually think it'd be great to get some information from, even if you're getting something at a convenience store or a gas station or a smoke shop, something to where you can get a little information about it. Maybe they had a little kiosk, a flyer, something. You know what I mean? I don't know, but hopefully that'll be where we're headed.
Behind the counter and informed consent. Like the people selling kratom at these smoke shops have no idea what kratom even is. They couldn't even name one alkaloid, and they're selling it to so many people, and they're hearing what the distributors say or what some random guy says. They haven't spent years studying the subject like Chris has or myself has, and just informed consent, keeping it behind the counter, not putting it next to 5-Hour Energy drinks or anything like that, and just making sure it's getting into the right hands. I think Chris made the best word I've ever heard, a gatekeeper. As our jobs as vendors, we are gatekeepers. That's what we're supposed to do.
That totally makes sense. And I do think you guys are right. Regardless, there are going to be people selling kratom at retail. Again, you can't really rely on, store clerk number 500,000 from Circle K to hand out the one pager to every customer. What I've seen over the past couple of years is some of these larger companies that sell shots in these acrylic cases. The reason I like them is because they put a big old QR code on the front that takes you to the science part of their website where you can understand exactly what you're putting in your body. They'll even put little fact sheets and attach them to the acrylic. I think if we're going to sell them at retail, that's definitely something we have to do. It has to be education forward.
I've seen that where they actually have like inserts, paper inserts inside the different bottles and stuff. That's great. That's awesome. Right there. That should be enough. You know what I mean? Here, before you even open it, you're going to have a big piece of paper come out. Read it. Here, something. Understand what you're taking.
100%. I'll say it again. Kratom's not for everyone, but for the people that need it, it's everything. That's my favorite saying.
Amen. It's true.
I live by that.
So
I feel so bad.
So real quick.
I was just going to say, sorry.
No, that's all right. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I feel bad for the people who lost it in like Tennessee, Kansas, all the other states. That's all.
No kidding. So my question is, I know we want to stick with the natural powder, just the raw leaf, but what do we think the next step is for kratom? Like, are we just going to stay on this path, or is there something that we're looking forward to in the industry?
It's a great question. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm much more of a purist. I think the farther we get away from nature, the more sometimes like 7-hydroxy was never innovation, it was deception. I don't know how you can innovate something that's already pretty perfect as it is. The like the full spectrum extracts, the the full spectrum, the broad spectrum extracts, 100%, I can support those. I mean, maybe like better flavoring or something like that, so it doesn't taste so bad. Easier ways to like consume the powder, but I don't. My personal opinion is that at least this industry, innovation could be a bad thing because it's led to that stuff. People trying to innovate, but it just turns into deception. I hope the industry, though. My hope is that we can get it into more like wellness stores and it just becomes more mainstream, educating people. Yes, physical dependence is a possibility, but there's a massive difference between like dependency and addiction. I feel like so many people got addicted to 7-hydroxy while some people got physically dependent on kratom. I feel like those are two like massively different categories and ways of life. But I hope that we can become like more mainstream and kratom is not feared, it's respected. I feel like if the media was honest on kratom, that because it's one of the most like feared plants because of the media, if they were honest, it'd be one of the most respected plants, honestly. But that's just not the world we live in right now, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I would love to see kratom at a Sprouts or a Whole Foods or natural grocers. I think the problem there, from my conversations with folks who have tried selling in at retail in these major chains, is you need to get into one of the big ones, and then everybody else will have you in. It's called an anchor account. You need to have an anchor account in order for everyone else to feel comfortable taking that leap of faith because of all the negative press surrounding kratom. I mean, obviously, you can get into the mom and pop shops, you can go store by store, but in order to make this mainstream, we have to find a route to market that makes sense. We have to find a path to safely sell it at retail while protecting the consumers at the same time. This is unrelated. Do you guys know if Dr. Chris McCurdy has tested your products? Because I know when he went on Huberman, he said, I've tested every single product on the market. Do you know if he's tested your products?
Pretty sure
Yep.
he has. Yeah, he has.
Yeah, we sent them into the University of Florida willingly for testing back in 22 and 23. They're doing a bunch of tests. So,
Yeah. Where do you think we'd be without Chris McCurdy? I know when up to the point when he went on that podcast with Huberman, he had conducted 85% of all peer-reviewed studies on kratom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be where we are now, that's for sure. I can promise you that.
Yep. Christopher McCurdy's like one of the main guys that's been studying kratom. It's been a long time. It's almost like 20-something years, I think, really. Maybe almost 20 years, something like that. And it's just amazing what he's done. So.
And his when I went to go interview him at the University of Florida, he's like, "You think I know a lot about kratom?" He's like, "Go downstairs and interview my colleague, Dr. Abhishek Sharma." Whew.
Yes.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, like I got to interview him for 3 hours, and it's like, oh man, I felt like one of the rare people that knew more about kratom than me. It was cool.
Yeah.
It was cool.
Yeah, he's so good too. He's another one. Jack Henningfield. There's a bunch of them that have been. He's not a scientist, but in that regard, the way he's been studying like that. But yeah, it's been just beautiful what's come out in the last science in the last few years.
No, I'm learning so much. I'm writing down all these names because I want to interview them next. I mean, this has been such a fantastic discussion. I didn't even know who Jordan was before Chris recommended you, and I'm just blown away by how professional you guys are. I mean, you know your stuff, and you're the right people to be advocating for kratom on the national stage. So I really appreciate you coming on our show in the first place. But gentlemen, how can our audience support both of you? Let's start with you, Chris.
Well, just like Jordan, we're online, and you can go to Christopher'sOrganicBotanicals.com. If you're in the Salem County, New Jersey area, you can always stop by for a pickup, we don't have a in-person shopping store or anything like that, but we do have online pickup, and we have a little center we're going to be opening soon for education, and we're going to be doing a lot of fun things. So looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you. Jordan, how about yourself?
So yeah, I'm very active on TikTok, like I said, at the Kratom Ninja, Kratom. And then so that's actually my yeah, that's me right there. And yeah, I'm very, very active on there. I post all the time. And I love doing like live debates about Kratom, and also newhopebotanicals.com. We do have a store here in Southern California. We're located in the San Bernardino National Forest, and we do have a store. But yeah, just go online, and that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely.
Hey, real quick, before we hop off, Chris, I just want to personally thank you for those handwritten notes every time I buy one of your 9-ounce bags. Those are really sweet, and that's great customer service. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome. And that was one of the things that were so important to me, is a handwritten note with the orders. And everybody, I remember in the beginning, it was either my wife or my daughter, and we were, things were hectic one day. I'm like, nope. I don't care if we're a little bit late. I'll get them over there and just make sure they get that note. You know what I mean? Because I don't know. That's just the way I feel. I always like that. So
awesome, man. Really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
And got another one coming in tomorrow, so I'll be good for another couple of weeks here. Appreciate it.
You got it.
Awesome. Well, hey, stay on. I'll tell you something off air. I won't say it on air.
Okay.
To everyone watching, we want to thank 50percentoff.com again for sponsoring this podcast. God bless you all. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.
God bless.
All right. God bless you.